Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. We're your hosts, Harold and Rachel. I guess I should ask you, Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been hot and humid here. Crazy warm for northern Michigan in the beginning of June.
Yeah, we've been in the 80s for a couple days, and
Same
it's
here.
been kind of muggy because, you get that rain. It rained. We had a pretty good rainstorm coming through, and then it's hot, pretty hot. And then it's like, phew, man, sweating weather for sure.
Yes. Basically, that's what I was doing today. It was just like sweat was just pouring off me because the humidity is at like 80%. I'm
Oh, yeah.
really glad for central air.
Well, these are not the best days to be out cutting trees on your land. It sounds like you've been doing some of that.
I did that. We did that on Sunday. And I actually think that was why I got a migraine on Sunday night and into Monday was because I didn't drink enough water and I just got too hot. And then on top of it, the tree pollen is just like everywhere right now.
This cottonwood's been letting go here, and it's just been that fluff is everywhere.
Yeah, and the car's just coated in it.
We went to a ball game. We went to my grandson's ball game a couple weeks ago, and it was just all over us and going up your nose and everything. You can't even hardly breathe because it's just everywhere. It was crazy.
Yeah, so I ended up paying the price for that, but we got the big trees moved out of the way. We didn't fell them. The bulldozer felled them, and then we just cut them up and put them into 4-foot logs and put them in the tractor. Man, that tractor is the best thing we ever bought. But rolled them into the tractor, rolled them into the woods. We just didn't want them. They were talking about burying them. And some of this was great hardwood for fires, and we just didn't want it to go to waste. So
yeah.
We moved it out of the way.
Cool. I mean, if nothing else, make good hugel beds even with some of it.
Yeah, well, some of these, I mean, I suppose they would. Some of these are huge. I'm talking big old white pine and a couple of sugar maples, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And an oak, and I think a few popple. And then some of them were just super tiny.
Well, I seen you had the driveway in though.
We do have the driveway in. It looks really weird.
I seen some pictures. It looked good.
It looks so weird. You look in there and it just I don't know, it just looks so weird.
Yeah. Well,
we're super excited, but it's still going to be a little bit. Oh my gosh. So my drama this week was, if people want to, people might be following our home building saga. The drama the last 2 weeks has been, so we're in a very rural area where we're at. So everybody has acreage. Fairly, I guess it depends on what you call large acreage. Everybody has, I think it's 5 acres to several hundred acres where we're at. And on our side of the road is one electric company, and on the other side of the road is another electric company. Well, that's what we were told. So I called the one electric company 2 weeks ago. They told me they didn't service our property. So I'm like, okay. So I called the other one. So I filled out all the paperwork and paid the fees and blah, blah, blah. Waited 2 weeks. They called us back and said, we don't service your property.
So nobody services your property.
The one company is saying they don't service the property, and you're saying you don't, but you're saying they do, and they're saying you do. It was just like, who wants to take my money?
Did you figure it out?
Finally, this morning, I got a phone call at 9:00, and one of them said, well, we went out there, and yes, we do serve your property. And it was the first one I called 3 weeks ago. Of course,
yeah.
So we finally have that straightened out, but it was just kind of like, who wants to take my money for the next, 100 years every month?
What's the estimation on getting that going?
I don't know yet. I was headed to work when I got the phone call, and I have an email apparently in my email.
I was wondering how quick we'll be able to get that supplied out there.
Yeah. So, that was our saga the last couple of weeks. We're still waiting on some permits. So
nice. Well, you're making progress every week. It's going to be exciting.
It is. It's a little bit overwhelming. Lots of packing to do. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, how's the garden and things going at the homestead at the
tiny homestead?
The tiny homestead.
So last year I got determined that we were just going to grow a ton of food because I didn't think we were moving anytime soon. And I planted a ton of strawberries, and now I have a ton of strawberries. So yeah, we ate strawberries today, but they're so good. Man, there's just nothing like fresh food right out of your garden. It's just so much better than even the farmer's market.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Those strawberries are like candy.
Oh
So
yeah.
we've been eating that and bok choy and walking onions. And crazy enough, my tomatoes are and peppers are already flowering. That's super early for here.
Yeah, I'm not even having that.
I
Which is
did start them early,
yeah, mine didn't.
inside, but I have never had, I might actually have tomatoes in July, which is so rare.
Yeah,
Usually
that
it's
is
August.
probably gonna be before I have them. Maybe. Um, yeah, that's nice. Sounds like things are going pretty well, even though you decided not to expand or anything or get crazy with this year. I mean, just kind of limited it, but
Yeah, I think I put in four peppers. I think I said this last week. I put in one hot pepper, which I've been having problems with bugs eating, so I had to put a netting over it. And then I put in three sweet peppers and then four tomatoes. I think one was paste, one's a pear tomato, which we love, and then the two are just fresh eating. Nothing new. Usually I put in like 25 of each.
yeah, I don't plant near that many tomatoes.
So, yeah.
Nice. Well, things are going well for you.
But what about you? You got some stuff going on
Yeah,
too.
I mean, this we've had some strawberries. We've been eating a lot of raspberries. Me and my granddaughter were just out there just a little bit ago eating raspberries. So I was
Yum.
picking them right off the bush and just eating. And my wife was warning her, like, you better slow down. So, yeah, maybe that's enough. um, Elderberries are fully flowered, and I bet those things are going to produce super early this year. So we're going to have
Oh, nice.
lot of elderberries. I'm going to have a ton of those.
The
And
ones you sent me have started flowering too, and I was
yeah,
surprised. Like
yeah, good.
I didn't think all of those lived, but now it's been long enough that I would have to say 90% of what you sent lived.
That's cool. Well, you're gonna have a
Yeah.
lot of elderberries then, and they
Yes.
get big. Like I said, I planted them along a fence row. You can't even see through that fence row. I got like 30 feet just packed full.
Wow.
And they're like 10 feet tall and just all the way across there. It's just a beautiful sight.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm excited about those. The peppers and tomatoes seem to be like the only thing that aren't growing fast. And I got only like
Interesting.
maybe a two. I started, I started them indoors too, but maybe a couple weeks late. But they just don't seem to be growing really super fast. I've been kind of disappointed in their growth. I mean, they
Hmm.
look healthy. They just don't seem to be getting real big yet, not climbing up high. I haven't even had to attach them to the trellis yet. I put cattle panels to attach them
Okay.
to, the tomatoes anyway. And they're standing perfectly straight up without even having to attach them. They're not even starting to get so long or tall yet that they need attached yet. So
That
yeah,
happened to me last year, and I don't know exactly why it did it. They did end up producing, but they
yeah, and
just,
I think they look healthy. Like I said, they look
yeah,
kind of
they were
bushy, but
just super slow and
yeah, they're
sluggish. Now,
slow.
this year, the ones I had, I don't know why, but they're just, mine are bonkers. I even buried them really deep, and they're just bonkers.
I'm not gonna worry about them. I think they'll be all right. We're just gonna get them
Yep.
maybe 3, 4 weeks later than normal, maybe. I don't know. But I'm sure we'll have plenty. Everything else looks really good. My walking onions are amazing. Those things are blowing up, and we've been eating a lot of those too. A
They're a
lot of
little bit spicy, but I like them. You don't,
yeah, I
they're
like them. They're
smaller.
strong. Yeah,
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah. I need to pull
Definitely
some of
nice.
mine actually because they have gotten to the point where they're growing. There's so many of them in the same spot. It's just like this mass.
I planted some in my guilds out in the front.
That's what
And
my
it's
plans are.
amazing how much those things have spread in those guilds. Even it's kind of crazy.
I
But I have
love
a
them.
bed
I
full
love
of them.
stuff like that. There's
Yeah,
just like almost no work to them. Yeah.
yeah, they're awesome. And we have baby buns. The rabbits have had.
Aw.
I don't know how many. I haven't really dug in there. I just see a pile moving, so I know they're all doing good.
I was just gonna, do your grandkids love looking at those and watching them?
Yeah, my granddaughter really loves going out and
Oh,
just.
I
You know
bet.
what's funny is my rabbits aren't like I don't baby them because they're livestock to me, right? I don't go out there and
Right.
just love on them or whatever. But they will come, like if I set one down in the yard, they will like come to her and she will sit there and pet them. But if I reach for them, they take off running. It ain't like I'm mean to them or something. It's just that she is so non-threatening, I guess, that they just come right up to her. It's hilarious. It's just,
Animals and kids, I
I
think.
know it's amazing. Yeah, they
Yeah.
just sense there's something about they just sense no threat there.
That's
They
cute.
just she comes right up to them. Then she just pets them. She was just out there earlier petting them.
So are they
Um,
doing okay in this heat, considering our last episode?
Yeah, they seem to be doing really good. Yeah, I mean, just plenty of water and have some air movement, and they seem to be getting by just fine. So it's probably better.
Yeah.
It's probably better for the buns, for the
True,
little
the babies. Yeah.
rabbits because they need that heat really. It's probably good for them. They'll actually uncover them if it gets too hot. I watch a rabbit do that. They'll have them all covered up when it's cold and at night, but then they'll uncover them during the day because it's so hot. It's like it's amazing how they just know what temperature they need to
Isn't
be.
that amazing?
Yeah, it's amazing just to
Amazing.
watch them do that. So,
We've
but
actually had some pretty nice breezes here, even though it's been hot. So that's at least we have that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the garden's doing pretty good, and even the beans are doing okay now. And once I got past the birds trying to eat them all and peck them all off when they were little tiny, seedlings. And so that brings us to our topic of the day. We're going to talk about growing beans on the homestead. And it's an
Yes.
amazingly large topic, right? I mean, talking
Once
about
yeah,
beans.
it is. It's a pretty big topic because there's
Yeah.
so many different kinds.
Yeah. And we're not even going to cover them all today, of course, the different varieties, different
Oh,
things.
right.
Like I was thinking, of a couple things we didn't even include in this list. We might mention them, but we're not going to go into the detail. Maybe we are on some of the others, because when I think of beans, I just really think about shelling beans and green beans.
Hmm.
And I don't even really even break down that there's distinctions in those, you can really break down.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I think about when I say beans, but there's an amazing amount of beans. I mean, kinds of beans.
There is
Um,
tons.
and the thing I enjoy most are green beans. I think maybe you probably lean towards the shelling beans a little bit more.
I would say it's half and half. They,
Okay.
yeah, I actually have, I'm one of those weird people that really, really loves lima beans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people either love them or hate them. I love them.
I like
So
them. I don't grow them, but I like them
I
actually.
have grown them once. I love every
Uh,
year I have like this one fun.
I've grown them once.
I've grown lots of dry beans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lima I only did once. Chickpea or garbanzo bean I've grown once. The one that I have grown many, many times is kidney and black beans
Mm-hmm.
and navy beans.
Yep.
I just think it's fun. I love in the middle of winter that cozy feeling when you're sitting there shelling beans and corn after the snow is flying and I don't know what it is about that. It just makes me feel very homesteady.
I love eating them. I mean, they're my favorite. I hate shelling beans, but
Really? I love it.
I don't
I don't
like
know
it.
why.
I'm just not a person because I can't, it's like sitting around knitting sounds like a horrible thing to me too. Just sitting around doing the same thing for hours and hours just seems like a horrible thing to me.
For me, it's usually like it's an excuse for me to sit down and I feel like I'm still accomplishing something.
When I do something, I want to do it fast. Like I can, like I'll, shuck corn or snap beans, but 30, 40 minutes into it and I'm ready to move on to the next project. I don't want to do it for hours and hours. It does
I
feel
typically don't. Usually it's like, so what I do, maybe we should get into this later. What I end up doing is doing it in batches too.
Yeah.
So we can get into it later and I'll talk about what I do. But
Okay. Yeah. Because
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? What we're going to do is let's go bean by bean here. Let's talk about, I think that would be the easiest way to do it because every bean's a little different. There's a lot of similarity, like bush and pull. And I mean, there's some things that are the same and we'll just briefly cover the same things, but there's some small differences. And so I think first, probably the most common thing people think of when they think about growing beans and maybe bush green beans. That's what I think of when I first think about beans because everybody grows them, right? And or what people call snap beans. Now they'll call pole beans snap beans too. So
yes,
but bush green beans I think of when I think about beans because it's what I grow a lot of. They're just a compact bushy plant. And you can plant them pretty tight together and grow them pretty thick. You want to leave a little bit of room because you want some airflow. It'll cut back on some disease issues. But, also find that, well, I don't go by the seed packet on anything. I probably grow everything I grow. I probably at least cut what the seed packet says in half because I don't want to give room for weeds to grow. Right. But what's really great is they don't need any kind of structure. They'll stay off the ground.
Yeah. And they're good for the soil.
You might get a few touching the soil or whatever. And, quick turnaround. I mean,
oh yeah, I can up here
beans on the table. Yeah,
as far north as I am, sometimes I can get 2 plantings in.
Yep, you absolutely can. It depends on the summer too. If you get too hot of a summer, because they don't like the hot weather.
They really don't.
Yeah, so it's like if you got a pretty mild summer, you can easily get two batches in a summer. But yeah, from putting the seed in the ground to harvesting, you're talking like 2 months, and you're putting beans on the plate, which is great, and they grow really easy too. I mean, it just doesn't take a lot of work to grow them. So really easy to cultivate. and just direct sow. Do you know anybody that starts them indoors and tries to get a jump on beans? I don't.
Well, the only time I have started them indoors wasn't to get a start on them, was because I had problems with chipmunks coming and
Okay.
taking. They literally, I think they watch me from the trees and look that I planted something, and then the second I go inside, they dig it up. That's what they
Yeah.
did. Yeah, like they were really, really bad for a couple of years. They're not as bad now, but they would do that with my corn, my sunflowers, and my beans.
Yeah.
They just take off with them.
Yeah. My bigger problem has been once I get about a 2 inch tall seedling, 3 inch tall seedling, the birds flying down and pecking at those and just tearing them
Ugh,
up. It's horrible. And
yeah.
rabbits will do the
So
same thing. They'll come through and just bite
I
the top.
think the hardest, I think that's the hardest part about growing beans. It's not
Yeah.
the actual growing,
Everything
it's
wants them.
keeping everything out of them.
Yeah. Everything wants them because they're so great. They make it great.
Yes.
Yeah, just that seedling tastes so good to everything. They just want to attack it. So covering them up is definitely with any of these beans is definitely an option to consider
Yeah.
because I've definitely had a lot of issues with that. And I'll just stuff them seeds about an inch or so in the ground, couple inches apart, and you can grow a lot of beans in a small space. You can grow
It's
a lot of beans.
amazing how many beans they produce. And the
Yeah.
more you pick, they'll keep coming.
Hmm. Yep.
Although
What?
the bush beans definitely tend to be more all at once.
Yeah, and yeah, they definitely are. Than the pole beans, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, they all at once, which is nice because you can kind of like take care of them all at once. If you're going to put some
Right.
up, freeze
They're
them, or blanch them
great
and
for
freeze them, or
like,
whatever.
yeah, for freezing and canning. Bush beans are
Mhm.
nice just because they come all at once and
Yep.
you can just do it all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as like growing them, I mean, just a consistent watering. You don't want to like overwater them. And I will just go ahead and say that. I'm going to say this for all of them. So let's just get it out there now. For all the beans we're going to talk about, consistent watering, not
Mhm.
overwatering because they will get root rot if you got too much water. But they need consistent water, So if you're getting regular rainstorms coming through, they're going to be just fine. But if you're going to go through a little bit of a drought, they're going to need some water. But just consistency with the watering, and then all these beans will grow good. And they don't need particularly great soil. Like I've grown them in some pretty
Well, as a matter,
soil,
I mean, as a
you know.
legume, which they
Mhm.
basically are, they actually kind of help improve the
Yeah,
soil.
they're right.
So,
All these beans
yeah,
would. But so they don't need the best soil. They don't need the most fertile soil because
right.
they put off their own. They feed the soil themselves. They tend to do really really good. They're not heavy feeders, so they don't need. They will do well with some compost added. All these, I mean,
Yeah,
everything. You get that little nitrogen
everything
boost.
does. Yeah, yeah,
They'll do. It'll help them to add a little compost, but they're not heavy feeders. They don't need a lot. So that's how easy they are to grow. You know, keep an eye on them for pests because aphids like them. Bean beetles you can move
yep.
in, take care of it. Preventing if you want to prevent some diseases, crop rotation is probably a smart
Yeah,
thing.
I've had issues before in the past with rust on mine.
Yeah, yeah,
You can get some breeds that do have some natural resistance to
yep,
that. Yep.
yep, for sure. So, but also it doesn't really like you'll get a little, and I'll just cut off the bad spots, and like
Yeah.
you'll get the end of a bean and just break that part off and
Yeah.
use the
They're,
rest.
I just love, my kids used to love growing them. They're such a great plant to grow for kids because the the gratification in growing them is so quick. The turnaround
Yeah,
is so quick that
yeah.
kids love to watch them. I mean, you plant that bean and within a few days it's starting to come up and it's just they're
Mhm.
fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're in school. It was like the first thing. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know what you were in science class or whatever in school in elementary school, and they'd have you plant a bean because you were going to get quick results from it, and they wanted you to see how things
Exactly.
grew. And I remember doing that in school. Yeah, like I said, 50, 60 days, you got beans, and if you let them go too far, the beans aren't near as good. They get big, they get kind of
Yeah.
uh,
Tough and
fibrous.
chewy and
Yeah, they get kind of tough, and so around the size of a pencil. I'd say a thickness of a pencil. They're nice and firm and crisp. And if you just kind of keep them picked, you'll get a lot more. I mean, you pick a
yeah.
bunch at that stage, then a week, 3, 4, 5 days later, you'll have a bunch more at that stage, and you'll get that for 3 or 4 weeks generally on
Yeah.
bush beans. So they're great for that, and you can store them in the refrigerator for a week, or if you're going to use them right away, or you can go ahead and freeze them, blanch, or can them, like you said, and
They're amazing.
that great. I mean, it's just such a common thing for homesteaders to grow, and it's a very uh prolific, abundant plant that will give you a lot of food. and
One
very
of my, yeah, that's one of my favorite things. It's one of the few things that I actually like to, I prefer frozen over canned
I do too. I do too. I like
because I love how
it's
they taste there.
canned nice if you're quick, you need something quick because you can pour it out, heat it up, cook it. It's good to go.
Right. But
Frozen,
I
that's
just
fine.
love that sauteed
Oh
crunchiness of a green bean and you
yeah, put them
freeze
in
it.
some
You can do
stir
that.
fry or
They're
saute
so
them or
good
whatever.
that way.
Really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love them like that. Um, Boil them as most people probably just eat their beans.
Well, and that's basically when you can them, that's what
Yeah.
happens. And I like it because they're good forever, but flavor wise, my favorite is blanching them and freezing them and
Mhm.
toss them in a stir fry.
Yep, and they're just super healthy. I mean, vitamins A, C, K, a lot of fiber. Low in calories. They're really just a really good thing to grow. They're I wouldn't say it's the perfect plant for health, but because it's got some things maybe you don't want. There's some carbohydrates there, especially on the shelled beans that maybe if you're trying
Yeah.
to avoid, you want to try to avoid. But for the most part, they're a really, really nutrition, vitamin rich plant, I should say. So yeah, I mean they're definitely something every homesteader should be growing some beans in some form on their, especially some
Right.
green bean on their plant. What ones are your favorite ones? You like?
I have one of my favorites is called a provider
Yep.
bean.
They
I think a
and
lot of people know
really
that
common.
one. And
Yeah.
I like them just because you can get two plantings. They're really an early bean. And they're called provider because they provide a
They put out a
ton
lot. They do.
of
And I've grown
bean.
them a few times. Yeah.
And they're easy to save the seeds from. I usually just save my seeds from year to year with those. So yeah, I like that. And then I like yellow wax beans.
I've
They're
grown
one of
them.
my favorites. They're yellow and they have a little bit of a different texture than a green bean. And
Yeah.
I just love them. I
Yeah.
actually have, it reminded me that I actually have a bag that I need to finish shelling so that I can plant them.
Yeah.
So,
Provider's
yeah.
probably the ones I've grown a lot of too, but I've also grown the Blue Lake. If you go buy
Yeah.
green beans at the store, most of the time
Yes.
that's the Blue Lake green beans. And you
Yep.
can buy the seeds for those. And the reason they're such a common, canned bean that you're going to buy is because they grow really prolific and they grow really
Mhm.
easy and they're pretty resistant to a lot of pests and disease and things like that. And they're a dependable plant and they taste good. I mean, so Blue Lake is one I like also, and I grow quite a few of those.
Yeah.
You can
I
also
can
get
tell
the
you one of the things we avoid is the string beans. My husband hates when there's
well,
strings on beans.
well, that brings us to pole beans, pole green
Yep.
beans. And we'll just go and put it out there now. Probably one of the worst is the Kentucky Wonder for that. They get a
Yeah,
whole string in them if you let them if you let them go too
they
long.
do. And then it's a
And,
pain when you have to cut them and
which is a shame because they are probably the most prolific.
they are the most
They
prolific.
put
And I
out
like to
so
grow
much.
them,
I
but
do
you do
too.
have to take the strings out, which is a
Yeah.
pain
I mean, if you get them really
young enough.
small, yeah, young enough, it's hardly there at all. But yeah, just let
Yeah.
that thing go just a few days too long, and it's got a horrible string in there that
But
you've
they
got
provide so well, and they're
to
pretty
devein
disease
that thing.
resistant too.
Yeah.
But the pole beans you're definitely going to want to have a structure ready
Yeah.
to go for pole beans.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to grow that. I love them, and I'd probably grow more of those than I do even the bush beans because we're a small homestead.
They're
They don't take up a
perfect
lot of
for small.
space,
Yep.
which is one of the benefits of them. They just grow up, so you
Yeah.
give them something to grow up, they're going to grow up. Which I do cattle panels, but you can grow them up a bamboo pole or whatever, a
Yep.
tripod or whatever. You can make all kinds of trellises for them and they'll grow. And
They get pretty tall too. I mean,
they do.
six,
Yeah.
8 feet.
Yeah, I got like 8 foot panels. I grow them up and they go all the way to the top and then they'll,
Yep. And then they
what's
fall
funny is
over.
a few years ago, I had a trellis, a fence trellis that was about 7 feet tall, sitting next to a mulberry tree, and I was growing beans and cucumbers on both sides of this mulberry tree.
Nice.
Well, then, like towards later in the fall, my mulberry tree was a bean and cucumber tree because all those things had
It
vines
just
so
went
far.
all the way up.
Oh, they were so far up into this thing, and there were just cucumbers and beans hanging all over this mulberry tree, hanging down, which was really cool. I mean, it was really neat for harvesting and stuff. It was just fascinating to have
Right.
that. Now, when it came time to clean all that up, getting all them vines out, stuff. I wanted to clean
Yeah,
that out of there because those things tie up in there pretty good.
they do. That's my one complaint, I guess, probably about pole beans is that sometimes the
Yeah.
cleanup can be a bit wieldy.
Yes. If you got a weak fence or something, it'll bend that fence trying to pull them out of
Oh,
there.
I had it pull
Yeah.
cattle panels over because we didn't have them into the ground far enough.
Oh
Because they
yeah.
got so heavy, they just fell over.
I grew them on regular fence, like just like field fence one time and
Okay.
have that. And you will trying to pull them vines off of there and stuff. You will just bend that stuff all to pieces trying to pull them off there because it's just stronger than the wire.
Yeah, they're
Panels
just,
are,
it is
yeah,
amazing how much plant is there.
yeah.
There's so much plant there.
But it's such a benefit because, like I said, you can just grow up and you'll get, and they will just keep producing
All
for a couple
summer.
of months. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you get a couple months, and they're about 60 to 70 days. So 2.5 months, you'll start getting beans, and then they'll just keep producing. And for, like I said, a couple more months, you'll just
Hmm.
keep picking and keep picking and keep picking. And pretty much until the leaves start browning, you're going to get beans off of it.
Yeah,
And-
it's pretty crazy. They're
yeah,
fun to do. We have done the arch too, and that's kind of fun to have the beans
yeah.
hanging
Hanging
down.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we love them. One of the things I like doing because the pole beans get so wieldy, there's so much plant matter there. I do actually like to grow the purple beans because then they're easy to spot.
Mhm.
Because you'll be in there and you'll be like, oh my word, and you'll find this
Yep.
huge bean that got like 12 inches long and it's not edible. It's just all tough, but because you missed
Right.
it, because there's so many in there.
Yeah. And everything else is pretty much exactly like bush beans. I mean, it's
Yep.
they're the
Same
kind of same
soil.
bean. Yes, the soil treat the same plant. You might spread them out a little bit further because you're gonna have trellises. So and they're gonna grow a little bit more crazy. But I mean, same it's almost like the same bean in some senses. You don't even hardly notice the difference. Like you can even get the blue lake pole
Yeah.
bean,
Yep.
things like that. So it's almost like they're the same bean. You were talking about the purple ones. We talked, obviously, we keep mentioning the Kentucky Wonder just because they're so popular and everybody grows them.
Yeah. I put that up.
Have you ever grown that Cherokee Trail of Tears bean? It's a purple pole
Oh,
bean.
I
Really
have
good.
not. I grow I thought I put that up here, but you put that up here. I have tried the Chinese noodle beans. But I
Okay,
think
those are on
maybe
down.
that's
Yeah,
down lower.
we have different beans on down. That's another kind of bean,
Yeah.
actually,
And then the Scarlet Runner beans,
which
I
aren't
think
actually
us-
which aren't actually pole beans, which we'll talk about later too.
yeah, those
So
are actual a perennial. But
yep, those are actually a runner bean, which is different. But yeah, those Cherokee Trail of Tear beans are a purple pole bean, and they're
I did
pretty
not know
good.
they
I've
were
grown
purple.
those, and they're pretty good. Yeah, I think I got those from who did I buy those from? I should have put a link in for that. True Leaf, yeah, True Leaf has them. I think is where I got
Okay.
them, and they're really
Yeah,
good.
you should put a link
Yeah,
in
I'll
there.
look up, make the link, make sure that's where it's from, and put the link
Because
in.
there's actually those beans actually have a pretty interesting story behind them too. So
Yeah, oh yeah, there's some history there. Obviously,
Cherokee Trail of Tears bean
with a name
has,
like that, you
this
can
whole
imagine they have
history behind it.
Yeah,
Yep.
you can imagine they have a history. Actually, Baker Creek has those too. Yeah, Baker Creek has them.
Yeah, I think
I'm looking it up
so.
right now. Seed Savers has them. Everybody has them, really.
Yeah, a lot of people have them. Oh, I forgot to put.
Victory. And my gardener even has them, so you can even get them there. So
Mhm.
they're a common bean. So
And what's
they're
nice about these beans, well, at least Cherokee, if you get the heirloom ones, beans are so easy to save seeds from because you really don't have to worry about cross-pollination.
right. Yeah.
So they're just super easy to save seeds from. And we'll
Yeah.
basically we'll talk about that when we talk about the drying beans because it's basically how you would save the seeds.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a fan of pole beans. I'm a fan of the bush beans. I grow both because they both kind of like,
Mhm.
you know, they both have their benefits and their strong points. But I particularly I think I like the pole beans, just because you get them for so long. You just every day you go out there and pick a few more and pick a few more. And like you said though, it's kind of almost like hide and seek. You're trying to find them, and
Yes.
it's amazing how they blend in. Like you'll just change. You have to when you're moving, you have to look at different angles because it's like
Oh
they
yeah.
hide so well. It's
And you'll
amazing.
get over to the other side and you're like, oh, I missed one way over there and I can see it.
And then they'll just be like you'll swear you picked all the ones that were right. You go out the next day and there'll be some that are so
Yeah.
big that they're almost bad at that point. It's like that with cucumbers too, though. You ever notice that with cucumbers? Like
Yes.
you will swear you had every cucumber. You go out there 2 days later and there'll be a giant yellow cucumber that you missed. And you're like, how did I miss that? How did I not see that? Right.
Yep.
And it's
That's what
amazing how,
it's a lot like that. There's just
yeah,
so much vegetation there.
yeah, yeah.
So,
But it looks cool. It makes a nice little thick wall, which is
oh,
kind
I
of,
love it. Like I love doing the old school trellis where you do like the tripod or you do the long row of really sturdy sticks and it
yep.
looks like the 1800s because I love primitive. I just love that little teepee look in a row.
Oh yeah, it
I
will. You
love
can make it.
that. It
And
looks
you
so
can, speaking of that, you
pretty.
can literally make like these little. Have you seen the people that make almost like a kid's playroom out of them? They'll like
Yeah.
make a like a
Yes.
teepee, and
Like a
then they'll just
teepee.
grow all the way around, and it'll grow up this like thick, and you can go in. And they'll leave like a door, an open side where you can go inside of it, and it'll be all beans, which is kind of neat. And they'll be hanging on the inside. So there's
So
people who do
I've done the trellis where you bend it in half and we've
Mhm.
grown the beans
The
over them.
arches.
And then
Yeah,
under it is where I put my lettuce because it gave
Mhm.
me shade for the lettuce.
Great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Because those are the things that you have to do when you have such small area like we do. You learn to stack those
And it just looks
plants. And it
kind of
looked
has
so
curb
pretty. I
appeal.
took so many pictures of
Yeah.
that year because it just looked so pretty. And I loved watching, like having the beans hang down and it just looked so pretty.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to to doing that. It's like I said, just it really adds some flair to the garden for sure. And then you have drying beans, which we're going to go to next. What a lot of people refer to as shell beans, shelling beans
Yeah.
or dry
Yep.
beans.
Basically what
Um,
you would buy dry at the store, like your
yep. And there's
beans.
a bunch of different kinds. We'll get into that in a
There's
minute.
so many.
But they're a bush bean generally. I think there is some varieties that can be pole also. I think.
I think so,
I
yes.
think I don't. I've never grown any of them.
Most of them though are
I,
bush.
all of them I've grown have been bush, and I've grown a few
Yeah,
of
same here.
them. And you grow those for their mature seeds. You let them basically just go until they're dry
Yeah.
on the bush, and you pick them. And that's how I do it anyway. And the beans come in all sizes, shapes, all different
Yep.
flavors and textures. I mean, it's just a bunch of different kinds of beans, but it's like when you buy the bags of the mixed beans, like you're going to make like a
Yeah.
bean salad or
A
something that has all the different
32
beans.
bean salad or
Yeah, the
whatever. Yeah.
32 bean salad has all the different beans. That's what those are. Those are just all the different kinds you can get.
There's so many. I think they're beautiful. Like the
Yeah.
dried beans, they're just so all the different colors, they're so pretty.
Yeah.
But they just take a long time. So they're not something you're gonna
Yeah.
succession plant. Wherever
These are
you
gonna
plant these are there for
These
the
are going to take
season.
3 to 4 months
Yeah.
before they're ready to pick and start shelling. So you're probably closer to 4 months. So you
Yep.
need it's the whole season. So as soon as the last frost date's over, you get them in the ground, get them things growing, and then just kind of take care of them and make sure. And again, they're pretty much the same, consistent water,
Yep.
the soil. They're probably growing the same kind of soil. Probably a little bit more fertile because they're a little bit longer growing. So you might feed them a little bit more compost, maybe.
Yep.
Um,
I would say the hardest thing about growing these is towards the end, especially here, we start to get like the wet fall and you want them to dry out.
You want them to dry out. And now I was
Yep.
getting ready to bring that up as well. Consistent water right up to the point where you want them to start drying. Then you want to just basically stop watering them. And if it starts
Yep.
raining a bunch, then you
Yeah,
kind of
you
have
might
that
have to
issue.
cover them. If they're
Yep.
mature, you can pull the whole plant and just hang it upside down.
Okay.
I've done that before, but you definitely want them. It's kind of like when big farmers do hay, you want that hay dry. You want these dry because what's going to happen is they're going to mold and they're going to be icky and you won't want to
Mhm.
eat them.
There's a lot of stuff like that. But you think about things you dry, like onions and garlic and beans. I mean, all this stuff has to be, basically it needs to
Cured.
finish drying,
Yeah.
cured. You're right. And so, I mean, but these aren't no different. So you want to get them out of the ground. And that's a good idea, just hanging them, upside down under a roof somewhere. If you got like a gazebo or in a barn or garage or
Yep,
whatever,
just
just hang them.
just
Yeah.
let them dry out and you'll know, I mean, you'll know because the pods will just fall apart when you try to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. They just
They'll
crumble.
just fall apart. They'll
Yeah.
crumble, and then you'll have these beautiful little beans.
And when they're nice and brittle, and you can sit around for half the day crumbling them up and taking the beans like you like
So
to
what
do.
so this is what I like to do. I usually will have paper sacks because I don't want plastic because you want them to stay dry. So once they're super dry, I put them in paper sacks and I'll bring them into the house and I'll sit on the floor on top of a sheet and I'll just watch movie and shell beans. And
Yeah.
I'll just do that for several nights, however long it takes till it's done.
And you kind of hold them down inside the bag while you're doing it, so all that stuff just falls down inside the
Well,
bag.
that or I sit on top of a sheet.
Yeah, I was gonna say because
Yeah,
that stuff goes
because it's a
everywhere.
mess. It is a mess. But I
Generally,
love
I do
doing
stuff
it
like that.
because
I'm out on the front porch or something doing it. Because,
right. I love doing it because by the time I get that, it's like one of those things that I do in the middle of winter because
okay.
it was fall is so busy here, with canning and getting everything else done. I usually do it in the middle of winter, so it's cold out, and I'll sit there and watch a movie, and I won't feel guilty about watching the movie because I'm doing something while I'm doing it. So
Yeah,
that's kind of like, oh, I can actually sit and do this. So I enjoy doing that and shelling corn,
yeah.
and
I think one of the biggest benefits to dry beans or shell beans is the storage. I mean, you talk
yes,
about
they store
how easy. I mean,
forever.
literally, everything is this process. Like, I mean, like everything seems like canning and freezing, blanching and freezing and doing all this stuff. These you simply just put in a jar.
Yep.
Now, I'll usually put one of those little uh,
Moisture absorbers.
moisture
Yeah.
absorbers in there with it, just kind of make sure they stay good and dry.
Yep.
That's it. I just fill it up with those,
Oh
throw
yeah.
one of those in there, put the lid on it, seal it, and stick it on the shelf.
And they
And it's literally
last so long. I mean,
forever. I mean,
I
years.
recently found a bag of beans that I bought, I didn't grow, of black beans that was probably 10 years old. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, this is not going to go well. I cooked it up. It was fine.
Yeah. And you could vacuum. You could vacuum if you had
Yep.
one of the things for the vacuum seal jar. It might even be better. But if you have honestly, if you have one of them moisture packs in there, it's fine. Absorbers in there, it's fine.
Yep.
I've never had any go bad doing that. That'll stay good for a long, long, long time.
They sure
But
will.
and then you can just make so many stuff out of them: soups and stews and chili and bean salads and baked beans and just so much
With
stuff. And you're so versatile.
some gluten-free stuff, some gluten-free companies and gluten-free stuff, a lot of them use
Mhm.
bean flours.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people grind them up and use them as flour.
Really, I've never
Um,
done that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't actually done it. No, I have not done it myself, but I know I have. There's actually a couple. For some reason, they seem to use a lot of them use the garbanzo bean for some
Okay.
reason, and I'm not sure. There must be a reason. It must cook better than others. But well, and part of it is because garbanzo beans, when you can
Are
garbanzo
garbanzo beans.
beans,
Wait a minute. Hold on a second now. Are garbanzo beans, are they in the chickpea family or are they in the
they're like the.
Okay, so they're a little different. They're a little
Yeah,
different.
I'm not sure. It like when I looked it up, it said they were a legume.
Okay, because I didn't have it on
So
the
are
list, but they're in
peas.
the chickpea family that actually is a bean,
I
not a pea.
know. Yeah,
And,
so
and
it
like
was
garbanzo beans, I
confusing.
believe, are in that. Black-eyed peas are also in that.
Right. It was
And we didn't even have those
confusing.
on our list, but those are a couple different, and they're would be treated like a dried shell
Yes.
bean, but they're actually a little bit different. They're actually in a little bit different category.
Yes. And you grow them similarly.
Yeah,
So
they would
I
be the
don't know.
same.
I was looking at them in there. But anyways, for some reason, that's the gluten. A lot of times
Okay.
gluten-free
Okay.
flour is made with garbanzo. Um,
Okay.
but man, like one of our favorites, we use a ton. I guess we use a lot of all of these. The kidney, the black,
Kidney, black, pinto, navy. I know. I
Um,
mean, just all of
I
them.
mean, if you like Mexican at all, who doesn't like pinto beans? You make
Right.
refried beans. I mean, and refried beans are so easy to make. This is where like just learning how to cook some simple things saves you a lot of money and you can choose what you put in it and so you know what's in it. I mean, it's just for my recipe, it's just cooked pinto beans, some lard,
Yeah.
and some taco seasoning.
I just love the bunch.
I make my own taco
Yeah.
seasoning. So you know exactly what's in it. And it's so much easier than it sounds like it is. It literally does not take very long.
I'll take any of those and throw them in a crock pot and make
Mhm.
some cornbread, and then you have like cornbread and meat. Oh my goodness, so good, so good.
Chili. I mean, there's nothing better than chili in the middle of
Yeah,
winter. Um, I will say I haven't ate a lot of bean salads. I should try
I
them.
love them. I love them. I love
Have
that.
you?
Oh yeah, I love
Like
them.
succotash? Is that how you say it?
I don't. Is that bean salad? I don't know.
I thought there's like
I don't
beans in
call it
it,
that.
isn't there? I don't know. I know. Well, and one of the things I do love is I love lima beans. I love my grandma used to make cream of lima beans. Oh my word, they were
You
so
never had
good.
like the three bean salads?
Yeah.
I like those, and it has
Okay.
that fermented taste almost, or like it's like I don't know if it's
Well,
fermented.
and that's something you can do too. So a lot of the
Yeah,
problems, a lot of reason people don't like dried beans is because of the belly issues. Um, beans, the magical fruit.
yeah.
But you can actually help that by boiling them and dumping the water off and soaking them. And some people go as far as like fermenting them or soaking them. And that
It does
does
help.
help
Yeah.
with the digestive issues
True.
that you might have with them.
I almost titled the podcast that. The magic.
Beans, beans, magical fruit.
Yeah. But I changed my mind.
I won't finish the song because all of us people our age know the song.
Everybody knows it. Now, dry beans do have a little bit different nutrition
Yeah.
file than the green beans. They're more, of course, they're heavy on protein, fiber, vitamins B and K, iron, magnesium, and antioxidants. So they're a little bit different.
Yeah, because you're basically with the green beans, you're eating the green part before
Mm-hmm.
beans are ripe. And with the dried beans, you're eating the seed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's again different benefits, but benefits nonetheless. They're rich in vitamins. So, very good ones. Now we're going to go into a couple other categories, which I didn't even realize they were such separate categories, like fava beans or
Yeah.
broad beans are a whole category to themselves. And I wasn't even aware of that till we started kind of doing a little bit of research on it. And they're more of a cool season crop. I mean, they really like the cool weather. And you can get like there's some different varieties in those I didn't even
I
realize.
was
Like there's some
seeing
that are
that.
really big. There's some really, really big ones. And so and they have like a more of a leathery pod and like a creamy seed, almost like a lima bean, but not as much.
Yeah, because
Like,
lima beans can be pretty big.
yeah, and I guess fava beans can be they got smaller ones and they got bigger ones. I guess there's some different varieties on those. They can be eaten fresh when young or dried for later use. So they're kind of like a little different there. They have a nutty flavor. I mean, I've eaten, fava beans quite a bit in dishes. I've actually never grown them. Have you ever grown them?
I have not, and I'm
I
not
haven't
even
either.
sure if I've ever eaten them.
I've eaten them in some different dishes.
Okay.
They have like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern dishes and stuff. But I guess really easy to cultivate and thrive in cooler weather. So
Well,
when
then
you're
I should
they would
certainly be
probably grow.
trying them.
Yeah, they would probably really do
Yeah.
good in climate. Again, you can just direct sow them after, the last frost date, or maybe even just a hair before, or early fall also, and grow them into the right before winter. Um, Everything else pretty much the same, inch or two deep, 6 inches apart or closer, for people like us. And, you want some air circulation. It's probably best for disease issues, but yeah, I mean, everything else is kind of the same on the growing. Benefit from this and that. Avids can be an issue. They benefit from a little
Right.
compost. They're also nitrogen fixers, just like all the other beans. So these take about 75 to 90 days to reach maturity.
They're a little bit
A
longer.
little bit longer, a little bit less than shell beans, a little bit longer than green beans. But it depends, I guess, where if you're going to eat them fresh or you're going to eat them dried. So I guess
Right,
that can make a
because
difference
you can use these for both.
both. You could eat them either
Yep.
way.
Yep.
So, yeah. So the young beans, you can pick them when they're tender and green and eat them fresh. Mature beans, just like dried beans, you just let them mature on the pods and do the same deal with them you do with the shell beans. And, and again, if you're going to eat them fresh, you can store them in the refrigerator for about a week. Dried, do just like you did dry and just store them in a jar. So everything I read, that's how they work. You can eat them in salads fresh. I guess you make them hummus out of them.
I love hummus. So anytime
Yeah.
you speak hummus, you're like speaking my language.
Yeah, it says here's the recipe. I see blend cooked fava beans with garlic, lemon, tahini.
Yum.
I don't know what tahini is actually. Do you know what that is? I don't know what that
Yes.
is.
I
Okay.
make my own tahini. Tahini is roasted sesame seeds, and then
There
you
you go.
blend them up with some kind of oil, usually olive oil.
Yeah. So this is a delicious alternative to a traditional chickpea hummus, it says. So you can make them
Yummy.
make it out of fava beans. That's pretty interesting. And just snacks, you can roast fava beans with some olive oil and they make a crunchy, healthy snack, it says. So yeah, some
That sounds
different
amazing.
yeah, I was looking at a few things there when I was like, oh, because it made me, I was doing a little bit of research on them. I was like, man, do I want to grow some of these? And turns out now I do. But then you added some things to those also, because you found some other ways to use
Yeah, so
fava
when
beans.
I started looking into them, because I've heard so much about them, but I haven't really ate them or anything. And now that I've looked into them, I'm thinking I'm going to try growing some just because they sound good for me. But I also read that you can replace them with chicken feed, with soy and chicken
Yeah.
feed. And I know a lot of people avoid soy for multiple
Yeah.
reasons, allergies,
Mhm.
just lots of reasons. So if you're trying to supplement some of your chicken feed or grow
But you
some
don't
of
want
your
like a lot
own,
of
or
soy. You
even
don't want
just
soy.
buying, even if you
Yeah.
didn't want to grow it yourself and you just bought like large bags from somewhere, apparently you can replace it with the meal. So the soybean meal you can replace with the fava bean meal. And I also watched a couple of videos on making fava bean, and it's really, or making soybean meal and fava bean meal, and it's pretty simple,
Grind up the
straightforward.
dried beans pretty much.
Basically, it looked like you dried them, of course, really well.
Okay.
And then for some reason, they do cook them a little bit up to
Really?
170 degrees. And I don't know if
Like
that's,
a roast or they wrote like
it
roast.
sounded like a roast.
Okay,
Yeah.
probably
But I
maybe
don't
it
know if
grinds up
that's
easier.
necessary or if that's just to make sure they're dry, because obviously,
Okay,
if
that
you
could be.
ground them up
Yeah.
and they weren't dry, they would be pasty.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so then they grind them up and they give them, and I also found that you can use it for pig feed because pigs also need protein, and it's because you can, there's just that
Well,
protein
you
that the
provided a
beans
couple links to
provide.
both of those, so we'll
I
make sure
did.
those get in the show notes. Those links so people can, if they're interested in that as a supplement for chicken feed or pig feed, they can kind of look at those articles you link to there on how to
Yeah,
do.
and I'm always looking for ways to, supplement a little bit. I
Closing that
mean,
loop. Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't think that we're ever going to replace it'd be it'd be really hard to completely replace the feed bag, but
Well,
any little
get
bit you
enough.
can do to
Yeah,
help,
I
you
mean,
might,
I think
and
it's
if you're,
absolutely doable if you have enough land and you
yes,
want to put the work
in
into it. I
time.
think it's doable. Yeah, in time, it's absolutely doable. So, yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm always looking for ways to supply food for my food and food for
Mhm.
me.
And it sounds like, as far as the nutritional benefits, are rich in protein, fiber, vitamin
Yep.
A, C, K, iron, low in fat, high in complex carbohydrates. So, I mean, there's some benefits there. I don't know a bunch about the varieties. You put one in here called an old variety, just old variety is what's called.
Yeah, it was fava broad bean broad Windsor. I found it. It was one
Oh,
of the old
okay.
varieties from like the 1800s, and
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I've never
um,
grown them, I don't really have a favorite or anything there. But
I
yeah.
don't either. But apparently, it's a very popular when I started
Okay.
looking into it. And these ones actually
Broad
do look
Windsor.
quite a bit like they look a lot like lima beans to me.
Yeah, they get.
But
Yeah, like I said, there were some big ones. Like I did look at some pictures of some, and there were some that were
yeah,
smaller, and there were some that were like I said earlier, they looked like lima beans. Yeah, they were bigger, like lima
yeah, they're
beans.
big and green, but
Yeah, and I would
apparently
imagine if
that's
you
one of
wanted
the
to do a
favorite
feed or
older
something,
varieties. I'm
yeah.
sure that there's multiple varieties that you can find, and you might be able to find some heirloom ones that have some
Mhm.
disease resistance kind of
Yeah,
bred in.
sure. Well, we've mentioned it a few times. Lima beans. Lima beans are a category to themselves, also referred to as butter beans. At least that's what we always called them when I was growing up. They were our butter beans.
I love them, and that's why I talk about
Yes.
them. It's my
Well,
favorite.
is it okay? Well, so I mean, I like them. I don't. I think I grew them one year here. Yeah, I know I did. But I mean, I'm not. I eat them if they're on my plate. I will definitely eat them. I don't think it's one of the things I set out to grow because I eat a ton of them. I do
Mhm.
like them. Um, but yeah, why don't you take this one since you seem to
Oh,
really having a
I just
fascination.
it's basically it's the same as all the other beans. You grow it very similarly. These they're a little bit of a flatter bean, so they're not big and round like not big and round, but they're not round like your black bean would be. They're more like a kidney shape and flatter.
Mhm.
The ones I usually grow are green. I have not grown tons of them. It's more like because I don't have a ton of space. So I more grow them for a novelty because I absolutely love them. And then I eat my own. And I just think it's fun because I like
I
to
did
do
see
stuff
there were
like that.
bush and pole varieties. I mean, I've
I
seen.
did not know there was pole
Yeah, I was looking
variety.
them up and I found some that were like pole lima beans and then some that were bush lima
Did
beans,
you
which
put a link in here? Because I might need the
I
pole
did. I mean,
ones.
I think maybe I was at one of the seed companies and seen. I didn't put a
Okay.
link in, but I
I
can
love the idea
back
of
and
the
see if I
pole
can
one
find.
because I don't have a
Yeah,
lot of room. And
but
but I just love part of it is this nostalgic thing. My grandpa and I were the only ones that liked the cream lima beans. And so my grandma always made them for us special. And of course, my grandparents are both gone now. So for me, it's kind of a nostalgia thing now too. But you grow them the same way you sow them directly into the soil. Um, we always Harold and I both plant really close together, but typically you're like 6 inches apart. But and then it's the same thing. You want to grow them with consistent moisture, avoid water logging. They do like a little bit more soil fertility. Um, I usually put compost over mine a couple of times, especially because this is a dry bean. It's going to go longer. So usually about once a month, I will put compost on my dry beans.
It looks
And
like
then,
I'm just breaking in real quick. It looks like I was looking up the pole lima beans, and it looks like a common variety. One just about everybody carries. Gurney's, Baker,
okay.
not Baker Creek, maybe not, but True Leaf Market, Burpee, all carry this one called King of the Garden. And it looks like a really
Okay.
big lima bean, and it's a pole lima bean. And then it looks like there's another one that Baker Creek carries called Christmas pole, and they're like a purplish lima bean
Ooh, that sounds pretty.
called the Christmas pole. So there's some varieties in the pole lima beans. So
Yeah. So one of the things that's different about lima beans than other dry beans is you can actually harvest them when they're young and eat them when they're a little bit smaller. And you can actually eat the bean itself. You can shell it and eat the bean itself when it's a little bit younger. But you can also let them mature completely and store them as a dry bean. So that's what's nice about them. I actually prefer them as the young bean.
really, okay.
Yeah. I actually really like them
Well,
that
I've
way.
ever
They
ate them like that. I
don't,
think I've always ate
the
them as dried
texture,
beans.
the
Yeah.
texture changes once it's dry and you reconstitute it. I will still eat them like crazy because I love
They
them.
they have even though they're been boiled in water, they have this kind of dry taste.
Yeah. They're like mealy and
Yeah, a
dry.
little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess that's why I like them, but I don't love them. I mean, because they
Right.
do have like it just
Yeah.
has like a I don't
And
know, it
maybe
just
that's why I like the
yeah,
cream of lima beans because it's basically a
okay.
white sauce and it helps with that. But I prefer the young beans. They're just the flavor. I think the flavor is better. The texture is better with the young ones. But I obviously I grow them, save the seed. So I let them grow mature and then I eat some like that too. But my favorite is the younger beans.
That's
Um,
probably good just tossed in a salad or whatever,
well,
even.
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
basically succotash is. It's beans, corn, peppers, onions.
Yeah.
It's pretty yummy. I That's also one of my favorite, but lima bean is one of my favorite beans. So of course I love succotash. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you can cook them. I mean, anywhere you could use dry beans, I'm sure you could cook them the same way, use them in
Yeah,
whatever.
and of course mine, I love cream of lima beans. That was my grandma's recipe, and she did not like most grandmas use a recipe, so it was just, her white sauce that she
Hmm.
did by feel and taste, and there you go.
Yeah.
But you can do casseroles and salads. So yeah, and they're great with protein and B6 and vitamin K.
And everybody's
Folate.
out trying to get K and B6 all the time, buying supplements and stuff, and you're
Yeah.
going to have those things.
Well,
So
and I'm
yeah.
trying to get folate because I struggle with getting enough folate.
Okay,
So
and I think all the
yeah.
beans have that as well. It's
Yeah.
something rich in
Yeah.
iron, magnesium. Yeah, so great
Yeah.
there.
And so, yeah. And I put in here, I love cream of lima beans. I love my cream of lima beans. I'm going to let you do this next one because I personally don't
Soybeans.
do soy.
The kind of grown that I've grown is the what is it called? Adenami bean,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
soy, and I've grown those. I'm growing those this year. Matter of fact, I've got those out there right now. And now, like when I think of soybeans, though, it's like you tend to like think of like what the farmers grow out in the fields, right?
Yeah.
All
The
next to corn.
GMO sprayed.
Yeah,
And
but
yeah.
that's not like what garden soybeans. And,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
think in those kind of, it's like that love hate relationship. Like those kind of soybeans are going out in the field, they're spraying with all that GMO. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. But
Right.
unfortunately, that's what a lot of stuff's made out of, and that's what they put in
Unfortunately.
everything. But there's some really good garden soybeans, and
Hmm.
so I don't. It's easy to have like a negative when you say soy. Everybody's like, oh, and almost gets this negative feeling about it. But when you grow them in a traditional manner,
Oh, yeah.
soybean is a good bean. Um, they're warm season legumes. They like a little bit warmer weather. And they're like unlike the other previous beans we're talking about, were cooler weather. You definitely got to make sure you're good and past your last frost date because they don't do good in cool weather. So these grow a little bit better even in southern climates, but
Okay.
you can grow them here just fine.
We grow them here. I know they do. I've
Yeah,
seen them in
and
fields.
and
Yeah.
there's different varieties. do better. But they're definitely more known for their warm
Right.
season. They're a round seed, round bean. Um, uh, Highly valued for their protein content, which is why
Yes,
they're
which is
so popular. Yeah.
and it's why they end up in animal feed.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, they're enjoyed in many forms, whether I say enjoyed or not. Adenami is the one I like, which is just like a green soybean, which is how I eat them. We just like bite them, and you like when you eat them, it's funny because they're in the pod, but after you cook them, you just kind of bite the pod and then pull the pod out of your mouth, and your beans just slide out the end. That's how
Oh,
people generally eat them.
okay.
That's how we eat them, and that's how I don't know. That's how we've always just eat them because it's like you just bite the pod and then slide them out the end, and then throw the pod on your plate or whatever. It's kind of interesting, but because they just pop out the end real easy. Um, but you can eat them as dried beans. Also, you can dry them and eat
Right.
them. But a lot of people process them into things like tofu and soy milk and
That's what
things.
I was going to say. Isn't tofu? I
So
think you can make tofu out of any bean, but it's mostly made out of
soybeans are
soybeans.
really
Yep.
common that they make tofu. So some people are almost get immediately turned off by the idea of soy milk and tofu. But actually they have their benefits. There's people who have allergies and things, and they have to eat those, have to drink soy milk and things like that.
Yep.
So if they want, a substitute. So it has benefits there. Again, just like everything else, plant about the same way. It's just
Mhm.
they're bush bean. So,
Well, and grown well, I don't, I'm not going to get into why I don't eat soy because it gets into my health stuff. But a lot of people avoid soy because it's sprayed in GMO. But if you get quality soy, it's actually pretty good for you. And I have had soy and I have had really good tofu. And
yeah,
tofu kind of takes on the flavor of whatever you cook it with. And our local organic store actually
bacon
makes its
grease,
own homemade tofu, and it's not too bad. Yeah, bacon grease.
cook your tofu and bacon
It's
grease.
actually not terrible. It's not my favorite. I definitely would prefer meat, but we had it. I think we had it in like a boiled dinner, and
I've had it by
wasn't bad.
accident. I didn't know I
Yeah,
was eating it. It's almost so
yeah.
weird.
I mean, it's not terrible. It's not my. It would not be my first choice, but it's definitely not as bad as everybody thinks it is.
No, no, but I mean, I think it has its benefits, but
Mhm.
everybody gets it. I think a lot of homesteaders get a negative attitude towards it because
Yeah.
there's movement to do away with meat and replace with these products
Right.
like
Yeah.
this. And soy has a big place in that. It's not bad by itself. It's not inherently evil. Soy beans
Right.
are okay. So
I
I
mean,
guess I always try to.
GMO corn is really bad too, and
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. But we love
we all
corn.
love corn, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but anyway, everything else about it is kind of like growing shell beans in a sense, I guess. If you're going to grow almost like a green bean, bush green bean, if you're going to eat them in the green, like adenami, and it's adamami, I guess is how it's pronounced. I always say
Oh,
adenami,
I
but
would never know.
adamami, I think is how it's MAME at the end. Um, it's a long plant to maturity. If you're drying them, it's 75 to 100 days. So it's the beginning of that will be like the green, and then around 100 days
Okay.
for dry. So, and again, if you're going to eat them in the green, boil, steam. Like I said, they're great. That's when you would, if you're going to make tofu,
Okay. That's when you would
stir
do it.
fries, soups, salads, things like that. Um, I won't even get into all the recipes, but again, there's different things you can make
There's
with.
lots of them. And actually, from what I've read, tofu isn't that hard to make. I know people that make it. So,
Yeah, and again, it's similar. It's got B2, and
mhm.
everything else is kind of the same fiber,
It has
B2K,
a ton of protein in it,
folate, yeah,
which is
high in
why
protein.
people use it.
Yeah, yeah. Healthy
Yep.
fats. It's got a lot of good stuff going on with it. Um, the one that I've grown is this, I think it's called Midori
Okay.
Giant from Baker Creek. That's where I've ordered them. And yeah, they're nice. They're big beans. Yeah, they're really big
Nice.
Adenami beans. That's how we always eat them. I never dry them. I've never tried to make anything out of them. We just eat them as like,
Yeah. Well, and that's another flour that is often dried for gluten-free baking is
okay,
soy
yeah.
flour.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is something that gets easily confused, and that's runner beans. Because a lot of people will refer to pole
Hmm.
beans as runner beans or runner beans as pole beans, when actually they're not. They actually have a different scientific name. They won't
Okay.
even cross pollinate, which I put it in the notes. I'm not even going to try to pronounce them, but just to demonstrate that they are
Yeah, I want to
different.
see you try to pronounce that.
No, I'm not going to even try. But anyway, they do have different scientific names. They are a different plant, even though they grow very similar. They're pole and they produce a bean, right? One of the things about runner beans is a little bit different than pole beans. They have this really beautiful flowers.
Oh, they do. That's why
Yes.
I grew them to begin with, was just the
Yes, they're really, a lot of
flowers.
people do grow them just because they're a pretty, they'll grow them as like a decorative plant,
Hmm. Yes.
runner beans. But they do, and they produce more of a flat pod, a little
Yes.
bit different type of bean.
A
Um,
bigger mine, the scarlet runner beans are definitely a bigger bean too.
yeah, but they're flatter, right, than
Yes.
like a pole
Yep.
bean. And so, and but they just do, they have all kinds of different flowers on them. They can be all different colors, and they have really high yields. They can do just as good as pole beans, just as good as a pole bean
Hmm.
on that. They produce really well. And everything's pretty much the same as pole beans. You'd want a good trellis because they are very, they actually don't get quite as long as pole beans.
Yeah,
They
mine
are
haven't
actually,
either, but they have
yeah, well, a lot of
a
people will
very
almost
long
refer
growth
to them
season
as a
too.
dwarf pole bean because they don't get quite as long as a pole bean. As far as the plant length, as far as going up a trellis or whatever, they won't quite go as high as those. But everything else is pretty much the same with them.
Did you
70
see
to
that they're a
90,
perennial if you grow
they
them
can
in,
be.
yeah, if you, I think it's zones, oh gosh, it's pretty warm. Like I think it's grow zones 7 to 11.
Yeah,
They can
yeah,
be a
they can be a
perennial. It's,
perennial.
yeah,
Um,
not where we're at, but if,
yeah,
yeah,
really delicious though. It's used just like green beans. You can steam them, stir fries, salads, soups and stews. I mean, they're really good as far
yep.
as like eating
And the
them and all
same,
that
you can
stuff.
eat them dry as
Hmm.
well. Yep.
And then the one you've grown the same one I have was the scarlet runner beans, and that's the
Yeah,
one.
they're just so pretty. They get
Yeah,
these,
there are
of
some different
course, the
ones,
flowers are red, which is where they get their name, scarlet.
but there's some different ones. There's some one that there's blue flowered ones and white flowered ones. I've seen some different ones, and they all make a bean. That all the beans are little different sizes. There's some that are smaller, some that are bigger. You can do your homework on that, but yeah, very beneficial and it's similar. See on the nutritional benefits, vitamins A and C and folate. So a little different for what they contain. So you know, look into that. Now, something that I grew a couple of years ago, started growing it 2 years ago. I grew them. I'm growing them this year, and they're referred to in a lot of different ways. Are the yard long beans? Some people refer to them as asparagus beans. Some people call them Chinese long beans,
Yep.
which I didn't. I thought they were all different kinds of beans, but I called them Chinese long beans last year. And this year I was calling them yard long beans because I grew a different kind, but they were calling them yard long beans. But I guess they're all in kind of the same category, but the category is cowpea. They're actually cowpeas.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they're a type of cowpea that
That
produce a
makes
long,
sense
slender
when
pod.
you dry them and you see the size of them. They look, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, they almost look like the pods of but longer,
Oh
of
yeah,
like
they're
a
long.
black-eyed pea because they're like they got that narrow in between the pods and they get bigger,
Mhm.
they're fatter, and then they go
Yep.
up and down like that, like a cowpea or like a black-eyed pea,
Yeah.
which is a cowpea. So you kind of see that. So yeah, they're in the cowpea family, which
And
is a
when they say
bean.
yard long, and the reason they call them that
3 feet.
is they
Yeah,
are
they can get
really
3 feet
long.
long. Yeah, they
They're
can get 3 feet long.
crazy.
I actually didn't know that either. I thought they were just like a green bean, a long kind of green bean, but they're actually not. They come in all kinds of colors. I'm actually growing
Yep.
red ones this year. I have like
They
some, and
have
I got them.
speckled ones, green
Yes.
ones, red ones. They're
Yep.
really cool. I
Purple.
think
I've seen some
they're
purple ones.
just really fun to grow. And then once I started growing them because I thought they were fun. And then after you grow them, I started growing them because of the taste. I
Hmm.
love the flavor.
You will need a trellis for those. They do grow up.
Oh, for sure.
They're like a pole bean. They need a trellis to climb. And they will. They're big. They get pretty thick and heavy. So you want a
Hmm.
nice heavy thing. I guess common pest for these is aphids, but I guess also spider mites for some reason. I just was doing a little research
Really?
on that, and I guess spider mites like them too.
I've
So
never had spider
unlike all the
mites.
others, spider mites were mentioned as a pest for these, unlike the others. So I guess
Interesting.
that's in there too. So aphids and spider mites. So something to look out for. I don't know. Maybe it was wrong what I read, but that was in
Huh.
something I read mentioned that.
Interesting.
Um, so you might want to space these out a little bit further because they're going to spread out a little bit more and take up a little more space. And you're right, those beans are long, but they're
They
really,
are.
if nothing else, they're a fun novelty to
Oh, they're
grow.
so fun, especially, I mean, if you want to get kids or grandkids involved in gardening, grow some of these.
Hmm.
They're just so fun.
Yeah,
They're really fun.
yeah. And I grew the red noodle, what they call the
Yeah,
Chinese noodles.
those are the
That's what
ones
I
I
grew
grow too.
last year. This year I'm growing something I got. They just call these a red yard long bean this year,
Okay.
and I actually got those at the homesteading conference we went to. At that table, I
Oh,
picked
did
up.
you get okay, so I wasn't sure if you got those or if Jordy gave you seeds or if I did.
Well, maybe you did. Maybe I got them from you. Then they were in a packet though, so I thought
Okay,
maybe
no,
I got them off the table.
I actually had some saved, so they wouldn't have been in an actual packet.
Okay, well, not in a like a homemade packet. They were like a homemade packet I had. I planted them this year, and they're doing good. I got probably about
They might be
20.
from me
I
then.
have about 20 plants out there growing along
I
a
love
trellis.
them.
So
They're one of my favorites because the flavor. They're different than a green bean. They definitely
yeah.
taste different.
Last year I grew those Chinese long beans, and they were okay. I wasn't a huge fan of them, to be honest. I mean,
Okay.
they had a strange. They definitely had a different taste to them.
They do.
Um,
I think they're a little bit asparagus-y,
yeah,
spicy.
I think I had this
Yeah,
let down. That's I guess what they call them, asparagus beans. Also, that's one of their nicknames. I guess when I ate them, I was expecting them to taste like a green bean, and they didn't
they don't. No,
at
they
all,
don't.
really. So I was like, okay, I think it was just like what I was expecting and what I got was two different things. So maybe that's why I was like, I don't know if I like these or not because I wasn't expecting that, you know. But when
Yeah,
I think back on it, it really wasn't that bad. It was just different, you know, it was just a little
yeah, they
different.
are definitely different. They're not your regular bean, but like you
Yeah.
had here for like the recipes and stuff, it's one of our favorites in stir fries because
Yeah.
they just have a different flavor.
Yeah. And if you got them at the right stage and,
Yes.
where you could crisp them up and
Definitely
stir
earlier.
fry.
We
Yeah.
don't like them as much when they get a little bit bigger. We actually like them when they're a little smaller
Yeah.
and
I
we
ate them boiled. Like I just snapped them up and then threw them in a pot and boiled
oh,
them. And they were not that great like
we've
that.
never ate them like that. We
Yeah, they
usually
weren't that
stir fried
great. I
them.
think they would have been way
Yeah.
better stir fried. So, but
Yep.
again, I was treating them like a green bean because I
Yeah.
didn't really know that they weren't like a green bean, you know. And I've learned since then. But I imagine they would be good in soups and stews and
I
things.
see you have here curries. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just seen that as and seen some of the
It
recipes
makes
people
sense
using
with
it
the
in.
flavor
Yeah,
profile.
yeah, I could see it too. So yeah, I mean, they just again, it's a fun thing to grow because they're so cool looking. Kids
Yeah.
love them, and just everybody wants to. It's like, man, everybody just thinks of regular green beans when they see pole beans or
Mhm.
something, and then they see those, and they're like, "What are those?" And it just looks crazy, you know. Looks like you got
They
these
are kind of crazy.
long snakes hanging off of your trellises.
And the nice part is when you save seeds out of one of those very long pods, but you get a lot of seeds pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, again, we didn't really add the chickpea category to this, but that is another one we
Right.
could have
Yeah, it's
talked about, which is the black
I
eye.
looked it up and it looked so iffy if it was in this a
I think
bean
they're
or
definitely
a
there. Well, here's the
pea
thing:
or
not
a
all beans are legumes, but
yes.
not all legumes are beans.
Yes.
So, but
Some
they
of them
do,
are
but
peas. Some of them
I
are
do, but I guess
yeah.
chickpeas do fall in the bean category, from what
Okay.
I.
Because I mean, we even
So
have trees that are legumes and
yeah,
bushes that are legumes.
right.
So it's a
Yeah,
very big, broad.
it is. It is. So we were trying to stay on the topic of beans, but
Yep.
I guess those are in the bean categories we could have talked about. We did talk about them a little
Yeah,
bit, but just
I love
yeah.
chickpeas. One of the reasons I'll talk really quickly about them is you grow them basically the same as any other bean, but one of the cool parts about chickpeas or garbanzo beans is they look a lot like a pea. They're like the size of a large pea, and you can grind them for flour. And there's something about them when they're cooked or when you can them, that juice that comes off of them when you can them, you can use that as an egg replacer for people who are allergic to eggs. So I think
Really?
that's
Wow.
part of the reason why a lot of gluten-free baking mixes will sometimes have that is because it helps bind the baked product together. Because one of the issues with gluten-free baking is gluten is what makes it stretchy. And when you remove gluten, you can't stretch flour and nothing sticks together. So you either have to add eggs or some kind of binder. And that's why chickpeas are
Garbanzo
often,
beans works for that.
yeah,
Or for
garbanzo beans, chickpeas. So, and then the other thing is, I mean, who doesn't like hummus? That's typically
no,
what
no,
it's
I'm
made
holding
of.
my hand. I don't like
You
hummus. I'm
don't?
holding up
Oh,
my hand as I don't like it, actually.
how do you not like it?
I know. It's so
Oh
my
man.
kids think I'm crazy. My oldest daughter is like, "How could you not like this?" And I'm like, "It's just," and I can eat just about anything, but it's just one of the things I don't like. I don't know
Really?
what it is. I don't
We
like it.
love it here and we
Yep.
make it we make it from scratch here. So, because I'll even make my own tahini because the sesame seeds, you just roast sesame seeds and you add your oil, and we want to make sure that we're getting quality oil. And a lot of times they'll use crummy oil to make tahini, so that's why I make it. And it's just that. It's just your whatever you decide to add to your hummus, which for us is usually like a roasted pepper and some garlic and tahini and chickpeas and olive oil, and it's so good.
Nice. Sounds
So good.
great.
And then you dip your vegetables into it that you grew in your garden.
Well, I think we're giving people a lot to think about as far as growing beans because there's just so much variety and so many things, and it's fun and
Yeah.
they're easy to grow. And I mean, it's just something that if you don't like one kind of bean, there's plenty to pick from.
Those it used to be like this wall hanging that people would put up and it had the actual dried beans in it and there was like hundreds of them and it was
Yeah, yeah.
like
I've
little
seen those.
tiny dip compartments. I think those are super cool. I'm like, I wonder if I could find one of those or make one myself.
Yeah, that's neat. So, what do you have for a recommendation today?
And looking up the beans and legumes and doing a lot of seed saving. So beans is one of the things that was my first thing that I started seed saving because they don't really cross. And so it was really easy to start there. And one of my favorite books for learning about this is one from Seed Savers Exchange, which is called The Seed Garden, The Art and Practice of Seed Saving. And I really, really like it. It's actually not too expensive right now on Amazon. But it's still not a cheap book. It's like $32 book. But it is so worth it. It gives you so much information on the plant species and how to save it and how to grow it.
You
It's
see
just
me
a
looking
really
at my
well done book.
bookshelf here. I'm trying to find it. I have it up here on my shelf somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I actually just ordered it because I've checked it out so many times from our local library that I decided I needed to buy it. But
Oh,
it's done by Seed Savers Exchange, which is obviously a reputable company that totally understands how to save seeds. It's just
this
a really, really
this
good
one's
book.
pretty good too. And this
I also
is a
have
great
that
book,
one.
The Seed to Seed by Susan
Yes.
Ashworth. That's a pretty good book. I mean, that's
Yeah,
got
you're
some.
going to have to put the link in for that one. I actually have that one too.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a pretty good one. I don't see the other one. But yeah, that's a decent one. Because I'm an old man, Rachel, I had a little bit different recommendation today.
oh,
And I
I
was thinking
fire.
about beans. I was thinking about, boy, when I pick beans, especially the bush beans and shell beans, you're down on the ground a lot because those are low bushes, right? Everything's down there low. And boy, if you got long rows, row after row after row of these bush beans, you're down on your knees a lot. And I was thinking about my garden kneeler in my seat. And when I'm in my garden, and these old man knees are going, oh man, I got to get back up. I really like my little garden kneeler thing I got. So I'll put
I'm gonna
that
have to
in.
look at that because
You can flip it over. It can either be a seat or you flip it the other way and you use it as a kneeler and you put your knees on
the
it.
kneeler I would
Push
probably
it.
be more. So the seats
Yeah, I use the
often,
kneeler more than the
yeah,
seat.
the kneeler would be nice.
Yeah, and I do that. I was kind of because when you use it as a kneeler, the handles kind of stick up kind of high, and you got like something to push yourself up with
Yeah,
too,
I've seen
which is
those.
kind of
That's
nice,
nice.
And I'm not too out of shape, but if you're out there for a couple hours picking beans, you start needing a little help getting up.
Yeah. You start to feel your age when you spend multiple hours in the
Yeah,
garden. That's for
yeah.
sure.
So I
It's a lot
enjoy.
of bending over.
So I just recommend that. It's not real expensive, little item to have. And if you've got your set the way I've got my garden set up, I've got pathways actually between, where I can reach everything from the paths.
Right.
And so
Yes.
it really, really works good for that. So yeah, that's my
That's a good idea.
recommendation for the
That's a
day.
good idea. Yeah,
Uh,
I should but anyway, yeah, I have that book and you should put the link for the book that you have that
okay.
you talked about because I
I
have
will.
that book as well. Um
Yeah,
between
'cause
the two, I think you get a really good idea on, you know, how to
yeah,
save
nothing's easier
seeds.
to save seeds from than beans, really, especially
Right,
dried beans, because
exactly.
that's what they are. They
And
are
I
the seed.
think that's just a great place for people to start if you want
Yeah,
to start saving seeds,
yeah.
because there is nothing easier than beans
And
seed.
even though you're not eating dried green beans, that's how you do the beans. I mean, you just let them dry like you would dry beans, and then you get your seeds, and then you have your seeds for
Seeds for
next year.
next year?
Yeah, that's that easy. They are the easiest thing to save seeds from because the very thing you're going to eat is your seed. So
Yep.
that's it.
I just put my link in there. That's what I was
I will
talking
get
earlier.
mine in
I was
there as
putting my link.
well.
And you
And
have your garden kneeler.
Yep, have the garden kneeler in there for us old people. But yeah, well, I hope we've given folks some really good ideas on maybe expanding. And it's not too late. Even this year, I mean, like we said, a lot of these beans, a couple months you have production. A lot
Yeah.
of them you can even start later in the summer and grow for fall.
I
So
usually succession plant mine. So I
yes,
will
absolutely.
usually, especially because I grow on a small lot, that's one of the ways I grow enough food for me to can
Hmm.
is by
Me too.
succession planting. So I will plant mine, a couple weeks apart. I'll plant some and then I'll plant some a couple more weeks and then a couple more
Mhm.
weeks. You just want to make sure you don't get into that frost time because they're going to die in frost.
Yeah.
So they're
But
not
yeah.
tolerant to that at
So
all.
if some of this sounded good to you, but you thought, well, I don't know if I have time to plant that. Maybe you do. So just do the math and add up the days and see how long till your first frost date and just see what you can, if you got time to squeeze something in and something sounded, like, wow, I really want to check that out. Yeah, have fun with it. And I think you really would enjoy it because some of these are really fun to grow because there's just not a lot that grows easier than beans, to be honest.
Yeah. And they're so pretty when you
Yeah.
shell them. They all have like their own different color when you open that up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just so
For
pretty.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And just green beans are just fun to eat and easy to grow. And you know what? Kids love to pick beans because they're just easy to pick.
Yep.
Um, and yeah,
And you
just
can
have
eat them
fun with them.
fresh right out of the garden.
Yep, you sure can. So just have some fun with it. So anything else to add?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, folks, until next time, happy homesteading. God bless.
And grow where you're planted.